everyone! How is everybody? Thank you for joining our panel. So, Chris, how are you? Oh no, can you hear me? Is he? So, everybody, this is actually the Kaiju Kingdom podcast panel as a retrospective for Dark Horse. I am actually going to private message Chris to see if his mic is on, to see if he can be able to see everything.
And while you're doing that, Jessica, I might as well just step in real quick and,
no problem.
and see if we can. I'll just be Chris's replacement here for you. So we're going to talk about Gamera comics, huh?
Yes, we are. Look at me trying to double duty speaking with you and then also texting him.
That's because you're a pro, girl.
Oh God, no! I try. Look, this is amazing. We already got a bunch of live comments.
Yeah.
Although most people are quite excited to see you, Kyle. They just said, "Hey, Kyle, how are you doing?" And I was like,
"These are my people. They've been the attendees of Kaiju Con-Line and awesome people all weekend, watching panels, having fun. I got a bunch of people messaging me about stuff they actually bought. So the whole thing really gives me good convention vibes, and it just makes me really happy. So
there was a thread on Twitter that I was reading before I sat down that is just, if you go to it, your head is just gonna go. Like this.
I don't need that. Okay, so why don't you go ahead and do a share screen for me so we can make sure we're all good to go. And then now that these lovely people have seen the intro video, they've already seen enough of me. It's time to see the Kaiju Kingdom podcast.
Yes.
Okay.
No, nothing against you.
But you're always welcome back in.
Yes.
Thanks, guys.
Kyle. You're always welcome.
Jump in there whenever. There we go.
All right, you guys are good to go. So I will see you later. I will come back at the very end for the viewers to say thank you and all that stuff, and that will be it for the night. And enjoy the Kaiju Kingdom podcast and Kaiju Con-Line.
Yay! That's wonderful. Also, Chris, is it possible to make that slightly larger? Not just for the viewers, but because I am a glasses-wearing person. Oh my gosh, is that full screen?
That is full screen. That is me.
Thank you for everyone's patience who's tuning in right now. Also, I apologize for the reflection of my glasses. This is just how it's going to be, y'all. So
for those who don't know, we are the Kaiju Kingdom podcast. I am Chris Seaton, and of course, this is
Jessica saying hi.
So our panel today is going to be on the oddity that is the Dark Horse Comics Gamera Limited Series, released back in 1996. And it is a direct sequel to Gamera Guardian of the Universe. But there's stuff to go into with that. And since comics are Jessica's field of profession and her first love, if you will, we're going to delve deep into this with, our... I'm sorry, I drew a blank. I've been working all day.
Yes. But hi, Venom75. Yay! Thank you for subscribing to our podcast.
Tickets for there we go.
Yes.
Am I there? Can you see me? Okay.
Yes. It's okay. It's okay. For all those who maybe are tuning in overseas, a lot of us are still shelter in place. And everyone's using the internet, so there might be in and outs. But then you'll hear me rambling.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll just continue the flow.
So let's start, Jessica.
Okay.
Dark Horse Gamera. First off, let's get the people perspective of what was going on at the time. It's 1996. Dark Horse is in the middle of their Godzilla run, and where's Dark Horse at this point in their history in the mid-90s?
Yes, previously it was Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
So it was Godzilla now. Now as in the 90s, not now as in 2020. And they also felt that it'd be a good time to bring another super monster, as I would like to call it, into American comics. So that's how we got Gamera. And also, very quickly, we're going to do shout outs, we're going to read comments from time to time. So if our eyes are dropping off to the side, we're just reading and saying hi to you all. So they did it. But with Godzilla, Toho had a little bit more, I want to say, creative control. So they were only allowed to use certain kaijus. But with Gamera, they were allowed to delve deep and use all of the kaijus that were seen on live action up to that point.
Yes.
Up to that point. And what we got was an interesting 4-issue story arc that felt like, I'm not going to name which Spider-Man film because we're all allowed to like what we like, but it feels like you were trying to smash in too many villains and storylines into a limited amount of time. So sometimes that's for people. Sometimes it's for people. Sometimes it's not for people. I don't know. It's up to you. But for me, it felt like I was watching a specific Spider-Man story, and I was just introduced to 80 characters at once. I didn't even know. Also, the first time I read it was a child. So when you're a child, you don't always get it as quickly as when you're rereading it as an adult.
The rose-colored glasses are at their biggest at that point.
Exactly.
Like, Jessica, if they were like Jessica's glasses, they would be the size of like those New Year's glasses with the years on them. That's how big that was. When you go back, when I was a kid reading this thing, I remember picking it up and being so excited. I'm like, oh my God, Gamera. And then you pick it up and go through like, oh, this is awesome. And then you go back almost 25 years later, and you're like, the 90s were an interesting time. We'll just put it that way for comic books.
Yes, it was. It felt, even though it was done in the mid 90s, it felt early 90s, like late 80s. I don't know how to say it. Hi, Pete Quint. And it felt kind of, I think as a child, I had to read it twice to get it. And then as an adult, luckily, I only read it once. But like rereading it once. But the overall, there was like 5 storylines going on. There was a tragic love story in the background. Just to let you know, there's all spoilers. There was a tragic love story in the background along with monsters. I don't know how to.
Well, let's break this down for a minute. Okay, so 1996. We are a year out from Gamera Guardian of the Universe, which is the title this book takes it from.
Yes.
Has not seen a U.S. release yet. ADV would not release that, I believe, until the middle of 97. From what my notes say, about midnight. It's that area gets a little fuzzy for me.
Yes. See, the issue is like when they had Godzilla comics, the movies are already out. So you have some sort of original medium to tie it back to. Just like when a film's about to come out, and then when you go to a comic book store, it will say this comic series will be a tie-in. But you already have previous knowledge of what's going on. Gamera was still relatively new in the United States, so the fact that the timing wasn't really correct, it gave, and there was a whole toy series right on the side.
Yeah, Trendmasters at the same time.
Trendmasters. You don't necessarily have the knowledge beforehand of what you're buying and going into. Also, you're familiar with Godzilla as like a giant dinosaur for children who may have its first impression. All you see is a giant turtle. And I still remember as a kid, I had to explain to my friends that it's 2 different people, 2 different creatures, kaijus, and they are in 2 different companies. They are not brothers. And it's like you're not privy to the knowledge beforehand. So it was kind of hard to market and advertise for something that you didn't necessarily have any previous knowledge or seen the film. There are other ways people have seen the film, I know. But most Americans would not necessarily have known.
Most Americans at that point, even to this point, still haven't seen these movies. It's kind of shocking.
Yes.
When I talk to people, they're like, I still haven't watched those 90s films. I'm like, they're the pinnacle of everything we love in those. This series, however, as much as I give it an A for effort and a C in execution. Jessica, who's it written by? You got the books right there.
Yes, so it is written by Mike Sellers, and it is Dave Chips. The inker is Mike Sellers, and the penciler is Mozart. Couto. So I don't want to spell it wrong. And
I think Kodo?
it was.
Did I pronounce that Kodo? Kodo? I don't know.
Kodo. And one of the issues is you can't always blame the writer. We were not there in the room. Sometimes editors make changes. So you can't necessarily yell at a writer and said, you produced something that wasn't, at least with my expectations or quality expectations, because you don't know what the editor said to the writer. You don't know what they were told by the studio. You don't know, like, they knew they had 4 issues going in, but we don't always know what goes on behind closed doors. So you can't necessarily yell at a writer. I mean, they have some responsibility. So does the editor.
Well, that's the thing.
But
Chips,
it's the whole thing.
Chips, from my research I've done, he was the head of editing the manga properties that Dark Horse was picking up at the time. Dark Horse being one of the first to really, like, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, they were, outside of Viz, like, as a mainstream comic company, they're the first ones to really, like, start translating manga out here. They were releasing it in the floppy, 30-page format before we went to digest size, but that was Chips's job, and I believe he was just handed off Gamera for the mere fact it's like, Japanese stuff. Can you do this?
Yes. Because at the time, there wasn't always a lot of, there wasn't writers that were also part of the fandom as much. It's always best to have someone who loves and understands Black Panther to write and love Black Panther. Like Mark Waid loves and understands Captain America. He then is chosen to write Captain America. There's pluses to that.
Dan Slott,
like you said, with Chips, he was kind of given the job and he seemed to understand or know the market from their assumption. Sometimes you're just given something because their choices at the time may have been limited.
Yes, and here's another thing for perspective at this point. Dark Horse, I believe they were just like 2 or 3 years into actually building their own, like, universe of characters. At that point, they were pretty much a company known for their licenses. They had Star Wars, most famously Star Wars, because they kept the fandom alive for, 20-something years until Marvel took them over. They had Alien, they had Predator, they had Terminator, they had the Edgar Rice Burroughs stuff at the point, and then they were bringing in manga at the time too. And I think for their original stuff, they had it was like Concrete, Next Men, and Hellboy most famously.
Yes,
at the point.
Yeah, they have Predator and also G.I. Joe.
Yes.
So those were important things. I did notice on the back of this August checklist, I apologize. I like to act gingerly with my comics. So if I rip your copy, Chris, because my copy is in the storage unit, I will buy you a new one. There was also Age of Reptiles by Delgado.
Ricardo Delgado's book.
And just for those who like other kaiju things. And they also have the big guy, Rusty.
Oh, yeah.
The boy robot.
The giant. So, that thing was... It was like picking up like a map almost. That's how big that book is.
It is huge. It's large format. It's oversized.
Arguably better than what we're talking about right here. It's Miller and Darrow. I mean, you're gonna get arguably higher quality.
Yeah.
And so let's go into the story of this like little scene comic book. Now, the main reason we're talking about this right now is because in about a month's time, most of you who have ordered the Gamera box set from Arrow, this is coming with that box set, and this will be a lot of people's first time seeing these books. It turns out these books are not exactly easy to get a hold of anymore. I was kind of browsing eBay the other day, kind of like, okay, well, how easy? It's like $90 for the full set, and I would not pay $90 for these books. They've been in my collection since I was a kid. I love them, but I would not recommend shelling out that money for the original issues. So let's go into the story, because here's the difference. So at the same time, we got Godzilla going on. We're midway through the run in Dark Horse. I think they're like on issue 9, issue 10 with Godzilla traveling through time, and it's just Godzilla. They're creating their own monsters. They're doing their own thing. Gamera comes in, and it literally is creating a sequel to Gamera Guardian of the Universe. Now, at the time of this release, Gamera 2 was, I believe, a month away from being released in Japanese cinemas, but it was very clear that when they obtained the license, they had no idea any of that was going on. And this story just pretty much kind of it's a weird Elseworld, so you can just leave it at that. And it gives us not only just monsters from the books, but it gives us characters from the actual movie.
Yes.
Like there are 2 recurring characters from Gamera.
Yeah. And then of course they decided his character's name is Lutz. You want to, in American comics, you want to be able, just like the first Michael Bay Transformers film with Sam Witwicky, you want to have an American character, preferably at the time a white male, to see the story and experience the story with them. And they knew maybe at the time that having Japanese female lead characters may not connect with an American readership audience as well. So they have a character named Lutz, which through every step of the story, Chris, he reminds me of Lutz from 30 Rock.
Yes.
He does nothing. And
he fails upwards.
He fails upwards, makes things worse, and keeps the amulet at the end. So he really doesn't do anything or add anything to the story.
No.
Other than be our perspective.
Pretty much. He's Aaron Taylor Johnson's character from Godzilla. But Aaron Taylor Johnson's character at least does something where literally Lutz's character. So the opening of the book is we're introduced to Lutz and Asagi from the first Gamera with the amulet. They're like, hey, we're in Mexico. We're doing this thing. Yeah. And we find out that there's a little side subplot. So we also have the returning. I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing her. I don't want to mispronounce her character's name. And Mayumi, I believe I pronounced that right. The lead of the first film that discovers the Gauss. So she's called down to Mexico by another scientist. It was like, hey, I need your opinion on this bird that I've caught. And it turns out it's a diabolical plan of the abomination sciences. Yeah. And we find out that this doctor is actually not who she says she is, and she pulls off a mask, Mission Impossible style, to reveal she is a woman but with blonde hair and like weird dreads and stuff like that. And she's got a cartel. Her husband is a former cartel leader. Yeah. And he used his vast fortune to fund her wacky science experiments, which include cloning a Gauss. And that's where our story begins, because said Gauss has gotten loose and they need her help to we need to kind of rein this thing in and get it back because it's kind of expensive.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you're right. It was like a Mission Impossible Black Widow end of Civil War reveal where they just took off and she went from a totally different woman that was brunette to a beautiful blonde.
Ugly brunette too. They drew her very homely. Very homely.
Homely was a good descriptor, good adjective. Yeah, and she actually throughout the story, she had they talk about how her husband and her had met. She was a different person then as she became more and more obsessed with creating the creatures. You know, she had beautiful flowing blonde hair. You were talking about the dreads. Because they were kind of mentally linked. They kind of gave her,
we're skipping a little bit ahead.
Skipping ahead. Okay, I thought we're talking about the whole story.
Yeah, we are. But let's kind of keep we're trying to keep a timeline so we don't lose people. So we get the introduction. So Lutz is with Asagi, and this Gauss starts attacking this small little village in Mexico. Yes. And Lutz and Asagi are in a plane when she pulls out the amulet and summons Gamera, who shows up. And at the end of the first issue, we get this big throwdown. And I got
you have a clip of it.
A little clip right here. Let me see if I can find it. Yep, jumping ahead. Sorry. There we go. So that'll give you a good look at. The models aren't exactly on point, but you get the idea. This is prime 90s, you want a job, man? You want to draw comics? You gotta earn your papers here. So you're gonna have to draw some monsters that make them look as closely as possible to the movie version.
Yes.
And this is how issue 1 essentially ends. We get this big fight between Gamera and Gauss in Mexico. And you're like, oh, cool. So if you're like me, you bought the bootleg at this point of the movie because there was no other way you can get it. You went to a convention and paid $20 to a CD dealer. And so you're like, oh, cool, they're doing this. If you're completely new to it, had no idea, like, this is the only frame of reference to Gauss you have is from Mystery Science Theater at this point. And again, they treat the Monster Mayhem stuff pretty straightforward. It's all done with a sense of fun, but there's also like a sense of urgency. And unlike the Godzilla comics, they're allowed to show a little more gore and a little more destruction, much like the Gamera movies themselves did, like all the way through. In fact, I think I got that panel next.
By the way, at this point, Lutz allows
There we go.
her to just go out by herself with the amulet.
Yes.
Because Lutz is useless.
So it's after this battle, I believe it's where the story literally dumps Asagi to the side. Like, she just disappears.
Yep.
And Lutz now has the amulet.
Yep.
And then we get into shenanigans, where the story really is like, all right, we're going in our own direction. That's where we're introduced to the other experiments that the lady scientist is creating, and the main one is Virus, the tentacle monster, who has a psychic connection with our protagonist, or with our antagonist, because she's been taking her own spinal fluid and inserting it into Virus as part of her experiments in having a sort of connection similar to how Gamera and Asagi had, except without no like form of like a device to communicate through.
Yeah. And I will say as well, you said earlier Lutz has the amulet. He took it from her. He wasn't gifted it, and he sucks. I'm going to keep crapping on this guy.
He's a bastard. He's a real bastard. Like, this is not a lovable protect. He's kind of played as an idiot too. Like, there's at no point this character's redeemable in any sort of way. He's an idiot. He fails upwards. And you're kind of like, how are you even surviving in this? At least in Godzilla, Aaron Taylor Johnson's character was a trained soldier. Like, he has used this. They allude that Lutz was like running from like gambling debts, and he's a shyster and a huckster. And all of a sudden he's just thrown into the middle of this giant monster stuff.
Yes.
So while Lutz is now like, oh, I can kind of control a giant turtle now, we get an even weirder. This is where the story, these 4 issues, really blow your mind, because let's do a subplot in the middle of these very limited room we have. Yeah. And they introduce Zigra.
Yep. Yes.
Let me see.
I'm looking at like my crazy notes that I have down. Yeah, they do. They do. And it kind of comes out of nowhere. So if you're not familiar, or you are a younger child and you're just trying to read it, it seems like they just introduced a character out of nowhere with no background. It's jarring if you are really focused into the story.
And not only that, there's no setup. He just shows up magically. Like, he just appears, and Gamera and Zigra have this fight that lasts the second half of issue 2 into the first half of issue 3. And it's around that point that not only are we just booting characters out, we're also randomly introducing characters. So this isn't Tolkien where it's like halfway through, here's a new character that's going to be super important to the plot. It's just, let's shove this in because I think, hey, there was aliens in this movie too. We're introduced to this bounty hunter that speaks in a wacky made-up language. It almost reads like the Dinotopia language that they created. Remember how you had the key in the back?
Yes, I was going to say, not only are we introduced to Frenchmen when Lutz gets captured when he's almost drowning, we also, I don't know if Chris could have it, but there's a language that's spoken, like a code.
Yes.
And it was made so it was a lot more interactive with the readers. So you have something to do between the next issue. You could decode it and figure out what she was saying.
And 12-year-old Chris did just that. I sat there for a half hour.
You sat there? Yes.
There's 2 whole panels after Gamera and Zigra fight.
Yes.
And Gamera defeats Ziggler. Shocking spoilers. She shows up, and there's just the giant word bubble that takes up half. It felt like it was when you're writing an essay, and you need to fill in, so you're kind of repeating your same points, but you're just rewording them. That's what this felt like, comic style. So like where my head is, like right here on the side, word bubble, all that, and they give you a key at the end of the issue. And you sit there, and like a decoder ring back in the day, you sit there and you completely translate everything. And it's just more corny 90s style dialogue because this book was not very high on the dialogue. It's very apt to like early Venom issues. That's the best way I can compare it. Like the real old limited series that Venom used to have. When you go back and read those, you're like, yeah, they were really aiming these at 6-year-olds. That's who was buying this stuff, and that's kind of where it is. It's pretty much her like reading like this little thing, and she's just like going, "Oh, come on, Zigra, be alive," because essentially she says her whole job depends on Zigra being alive to bring back to whoever gave her money to bring Zigra back. Think of Loaded like he's an escaped like prisoner.
Yeah.
If my memory recalls, and again, this is just all plopped in out of nowhere in the middle of this story. Like it was just like we need a filler before we get to our big arc with Virus, who is technically the true big bad of this storyline. Which
yes, and then they introduce plot C, which is like how they met, how how the scientist and her husband met, and it was like we didn't really need it. But here we are, plot
again,
C.
Padding it out.
Yeah.
Just padding out we got 22 pages we got to fill along with advertising. Got to pad it out. You got to get them up. I'm sorry, you got to write. What was the cover price on these things back then?
It was $2.95 US, $4.15 Canadian.
So not a hell of a lot has changed in 25 years. We've only really gone up like about $1 or $2, haven't we?
Yeah.
Like the average
some
book's
issues
like
are $3.99 to $4.99.
Yeah.
But DC tried to have a limit on their pricing when the new 52 came out and everything, but I was okay with it. I don't know how others felt about it, but there they were. But yes, at that time we were already at DC prices, and it was $2.95 for an issue.
So let me see. I'm gonna pull up here. So we're going into the home stretch at the end of issue 3, which is okay. So to give right here, here's a better image of what our alien hero looks like. Our alien, which again, she does almost next to nothing other than provide.
Yes. Yeah.
Like pretty much just like a tactical advantage with her spaceship. I believe. Let's see. How did it go? So they're tracking down Lutz because he's got the amulet.
Yeah.
The evil scientist and her husband want the amulet for Gamera because Zigra demands it. Or not Zigra, I'm sorry. Virus demands it. Virus's grand... They do at least leave these elements of the original monsters in there where Virus was, technically in the original movie he's an alien, but he's intelligent. He can communicate. This one, it's artificial intelligence, but he still has plans for world domination, and thus wants to use Gamera as like hired muscle, essentially.
Yeah. And
we do get to that point where the bad guys get a hold of the amulet, and they use Gamera as pretty much a giant shield for Virus when he goes on his destruction spree, and it just devolves from there. Virus pretty much just does his rampage. I forgot. Oh, it's the husband, right? He has a change.
Yeah, Gusanos.
Yes, he has a change of heart, I believe, where he realizes his wife is completely under control of Virus, and she completely goes. That's what we were talking about earlier. The dreads. She starts dreading her hair like an octopus. Like
she looks exactly like Virus, and it reminded me of Amy Santiago in that episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine when she's stressed out about to take a exam, and she just braids out her hair. And there are odd wording choices that the writer Chips chooses. He'll just have Guasano say to his wife or partner, like, also, I don't like your hair. And she's like, what does this have to do with anything?
it's yeah, it's
it just
at,
seems to fill in empty space, like
yes.
waiting, like a filler or a bottle. It's like a mini bottle episode.
Again, it's
The dialogue didn't make any sense.
I have a 12,000 word essay I need to write. Let me fill in a couple of paragraphs restating my same point, but just rewording it just ever so slightly, adding some big words in there so we can get that word count up.
Yes, and then he has odd choice moments too with how Lutz interacts with like the women. He's very into how they look. One time he falls on top of one and says, "Oh, things are getting better." So even if you didn't look to see who wrote it, you kind of knew it was a dude. And him falling on top of the characters, female characters, have nothing to do with the overall story.
No.
It doesn't bring. I understand humor, but it doesn't bring added humor to the plot.
There is some forced humor in there, but it never hits at all.
Yes.
It really feels like it does read like kind of like a, I don't want to say bad, because here's the thing, it might seem like we're kind of ripping into this book. There's still a charm to this book. Like, you're sitting there, unlike, I'll put it this way. It is much more in tune with what IDW did with the Godzilla license than what Dark Horse did. Where Dark Horse was following certain guidelines and stuff, Dai or Kadokawa at the time gave at Dark Horse full carte blanche. Like, you do what you want. And that's why it still astonishes me that they decided to actually make this a full sequel. Now, they are creating a story from whole cloth. Segra and Virus do get a brand new origin. You don't really have to watch the other, you don't have to watch any of the movies to really understand it. Like, they're there, they establish it, this is what they are, and then we get an awesome monster fight. And the book does deliver on that. Each issue gives you something really needy to get into if you like that kind of stuff.
Yes. Freenan, the alien, she speaks like a bumblebee through the radio. Just slang that is very hard on my ears, and it's not even an audio.
And that's the thing, when you decipher her little speech bubbles, there is that slang in there. So when you're reading it, you're like, I'm sorry, am I having a stroke? Did I do that right? This doesn't. These words I don't understand. Like she uses like weird synonyms for cool and all kinds of other stuff. It felt very like ham-handed in the delivery.
Yeah. Oh my gosh! I just realized, Chris, is she female Lutz? Because she just doesn't do anything.
She's actually. I mean, I get it. They're trying to make her a little bit like like she's a little bit like Lobo, but none of the badassery. Really, she has a flying ship that's very retro, old style, as you can see in the picture,
like a Zeppelin, like a Hindenburg.
Yeah, and she actually does. Like, she actually has a hand in turning the tide in the final fight. So she actually does something. It's like, oh.
She actually does something, yeah, like you were saying. Especially in that image that you have, she at least runs into Virus.
Wacky giant model. There we go.
No problem.
So yeah, and then we get pretty much, the final fight. Let me see if I can find if I had anything on here. Oh, no, I didn't put it in there. So, okay, well, here's a prime example. Okay, so here's our grand hero, everybody. This guy right here, you can see in the top left corner, that is our hero. They draw him like he's a deadbeat dad at a Raiders game. That's what he looks like. Like, if he ran his background, I'm pretty sure he's got like 5 tickets and he owes child support. Like, a lot of back child support. That's our hero. This is what they chose.
I mean,
this is the company at the time that's given us amazing Alien comics. We got like Predator Race War, which was a groundbreaking book. We got Mike Mignola's cranking out Hellboy, and this is our hero, everyone. I was
just reviewing the comics. Without giving any context, I showed what the character looked like to one of my best friends, and he's like, "Oh, he looks like a '90s Like, it looks like an action. And like, it was,
Uh-oh. You there?
yes, I
Okay.
am.
Okay. You broke up a little bit. Sorry.
Oh no, so sorry.
No.
But yeah, I don't know what everybody heard, but no, he's drawn like a typical 90s action hero.
Yeah.
Maybe not hero.
No, he's not a hero.
Man,
you can't even say
action
anti-hero.
Man. You can't even say hero. Yes, like a 90s action man. Without context, you know it's the 90s.
He is. You know what he's drawn like? He's drawn like. And I think this predates it too. He's drawn like Nick Cage's character in the middle, like in Con Air. That's what he looks like, and that's what he's kind of drawn like.
Oh
just
my gosh,
scumbaggy. You know that, and he's nothing but a scumbag in the whole thing. Like, his attempt at a heroic redemption falls flat. It just falls flat. He's just like, well, I prevented. I guess I kind of helped prevent it. Like
yeah.
He I believe it. He even takes it. I think he takes the credit for, defeating the evil scientist and everything when he has absolutely nothing to do with it either.
Yeah. Yeah, and he gets knocked out really easily. Yes. By like Guasano. Like, there is nothing. I don't even know why we're following him in this story. I should just follow Gamera. Just follow the giant turtle. Y'all don't follow him.
If we followed the protagonist, it would have been an even more or the antagonist, it would have been an even more interesting story. Because it would have literally turned it around, at least if we did from their perspective, it'd be like this evil scientist and her cartel husband trying to create giant monsters in their secret laboratory down in like Guatemala or somewhere, and Gamera gets in the way, and it's pretty much, it's like you could have done a monster of the week with it, but instead, we got this, which is, when you read this now, it's like such an odd choice. I really wish I would have been a fly on the wall for this like pitch meeting, like, all right, this is what we're gonna do. So we're gonna make a sequel to this movie that very few people in the United States have seen. And we got used to these other characters, which, by the way, I'm not even sure they even paid for likeness rights or anything like that. But apparently they got the rights to use them, or they just did it, and Dai just said, "Who cares? Go ahead," and just went sick, and he gave us this thing, and it's such an oddball. It's such an oddity. Especially when we get to the end of the fourth issue, where Gamera and Virus had this big knockdown, drag-out fight.
Yeah.
And, there's at least a little bit of the lore they play with, where Gamera's fueled by fire and stuff like that. And there's the one character who has the redemption arc.
Yes.
Of all people.
Yes.
Is the husband.
The cartel, Guasano, because he ends up taking what they had in the submarine to try to revive or help Gamera.
Yeah.
Against the final,
Gamera's been blasted by military weapons. Yes. He's gotten beaten up, and then once he's freed of the evil scientist's grasp, like she loses the amulet. Gamera is pretty much he's wounded, and he starts fighting Virus. Virus overpowers him. I believe she dies. She ends up like does she kill herself? I'm trying to remember. I have my notes, but it's been.
The doctor. She ends up falling off of the.
She has a Disney villain death. That's right.
Yeah,
she has
and then she's not found. Her body is not found because her Guasano tries to take the amulet from her neck.
Yes, because Virus is pretty much in her. Virus is it's not even her wife anymore. Yes. It's Virus. It's all he's in her head, and throughout the book, he's like, hey, I've done some heinous things, but should we be really doing this? Can't we just go sit in one of my private islands and enjoy Mai Tais and each other's company? Like, there's always that sense of like he's
hitting on the ladies, he's hitting on the ladies, trying to take the easy way out.
True. And then there's a very cool spot. There's a very cool moment that I'll save it for when you guys actually read the book. But his redemption arc is one of the coolest things drawn. The redemption moment is one of the coolest things drawn in this whole book. And I'm not going to spoil that for you guys. I'll leave that for, when you pick up the DVD set. But it does give Gamera the kind of like, it is kind of like replaying to the end of Gamera 1 when the foundry explodes and he just sucks all the energy back in.
Yeah.
and then shoots that giant plasma ball.
Yeah.
It is very akin to that. I'll just leave it at that.
Yes. Oh, and I was wrong. When I meant hitting on the ladies, I meant Lutz, not Guasanos.
Yes.
That dude is devoted to his wife.
Yes. For that guy who was also a scumbag and an actual murderer was far more appealing and a nicer guy than our hero. Like the POS was, I mean, this is the actual hero of the book when you really break it down.
That's true.
Lutz does nothing.
Yeah. That's actually very true. He's the true MVP of the of this 4-issue story arc, which felt like 12 issues jammed into 4 issues.
It very much did. And it left it open in case they were going to do more. Now, here's the... Oh, did I just lose it? There we go. So, here are the colors they used. They didn't use any original artwork for the cover. They used these Yuji Kaida paintings that he did for the original Gamera for artwork for all 4.
Yeah. Yep.
So here's issue 1. This was issue 4, 3, and 2. Now, when you're a kid and you pull these up, like you are like, oh man, that looks awesome. And then you open up in the inside and you get
the art's completely different. The cover artist and the interior artist is sometimes different, or oftentimes different.
It's like the opening of a cartoon compared to the actual episode of the cartoon. Especially back in the 80s. You had Thundercats, and then you had Thundercats. So.
Yeah, and they always made sure, I mean, they had a typo. I know the editor in one of the letter sections said I had miscredited a different artist, but it always says cover art is by, like Hashimoto. Like, they would say who it is. So the cover art's completely different. But depending on your store, some stores have these in plastic sleeves. So you're not necessarily allowed to open it and then check.
That's how
right?
mine was.
If you're like, is Sellers and Kudo the one doing, like, if you don't know the artist style, that you wouldn't be able to know what you're gonna get inside. It's like a marketing genius bait and switch.
It is, and it's still to this day. It's like, okay, we're doing this 4-issue.
Yeah.
And at this point, I think by the time this was done, Godzilla pretty much was already winding down. If I do recall, the Dark Horse Godzilla was selling well enough that it allowed 4 more issues to be produced. They were all one-shot issues.
Right.
And then you had Gamera, and then at this point in Japan, Gamera 2, by the time this came out, by the time this book finished, has come out. Now, no one in the States in 1996 has seen it yet, unless you traveled directly to Japan. And it'd be months before the Laserdisc comes out, before the bootleggers can make their copies and sell them. So for a while, this was pretty much America's introduction to the Heisei Gamera. I mean, this predates ADV. This predates a lot of stuff, and it just feels weird. It had to have been like, we got Godzilla. Gamera's kind of well known enough. I mean, Mystery Science Theater is still running at this point. The Gamera movies themselves, at that point, are completely out of circulation. Sans like a rare 3 a.m. thrown up on TBS, at some point. But for the most part, you're not seeing any of the old Gamera movies on TV anymore. So my age, unless you're like me, my dad knew what this stuff was, and it's like, oh, here's a Gamera tape. What is this? It's like Godzilla. Go ahead and watch it. That's the only way you really knew about this character. And
Right.
Dark Horse was like, let's do it. Let's put more up there. Let's put more out there. Let's do this Gamera thing. Like, this was going to be a big seller, and not at all.
It was, and it wasn't really. I noticed in one of the letters in one of the issues, it talked about the current downtrend of the comic book stores at the time, and that to please purchase comics and Dark Horse to help out. So if you know that your industry is not at its strongest, it's very odd to kind of push a character that a lot of people didn't know. If your industry, you want to go with what is most popular, that that's going to financially bring back what you can back in, right? So it was odd to do Gamera, but they were maybe hoping it would be Godzilla. You know, they want I think every company wants to be known to be the pioneer in that area who brought that character into popularity into that country or that region. And maybe they were hoping it was for that.
I mean, for every Alien and Predator and Star Wars they picked up, they attempted with Starship Troopers, they attempted with Gamera, they attempted Godzilla. Like, they licensed a lot of stuff that never truly took off. Like, they had a few things that really, like, maybe, like, had some, like, cult followings, but beyond that, like, they did a ton of licensed stuff that they fell into what I called the Mattel curse, where it's like, we license everything and we can't pick the winner. It all just keeps losing on us. But at least Dark Horse had, 3 major Fox properties that were really propping them up, and then they were starting to get acclaim with, like Hellboy and stuff like that. And see, 96, we are, if memory serves me correct, we are like 9 months away from Marvel filing bankruptcy, if memory serves correct. So I believe that was mid 1997?
Around that time.
Yes, and the whole industry at that point, Marvel most of all, had completely crippled like the comic book industry. I mean, my dad's friend owned a store. That's how I got all these books. And I remember him talking. I was like, like there's like 9,000 X-Men books and 5,000 Spider-Man books. It's like no one's buying Captain America anymore. No one's buying Iron Man.
Yeah, and it's Spider-Man Clone Saga when it went through the whole thing, and then Superman died and came back. It was just like everything
Nightfall?
is Batman Nightfall, and it was like, what is happening in the comic book industry? Gamera.
I liked the Clone Saga, by the way. I love Ben Reilly. I love the Scarlet Spider.
My gosh!
It's a mess. It is, but it's a mess. I will still read. I'm just like, yes, this is good times. This is an incomprehensible mess, but whatever. I watch pro wrestling still, so it's like I can deal with that kind of like stupidity. It felt like, oh no, we're changing this, we're changing it. Like, I don't care. Like, I love to look at the Scarlet Spider, and I thought Ben was a cool character, so I can forgive so much stupid stuff with that whole storyline.
You know what? Outside of that, on a bigger scale, I liked their crazy covers. They had like holographic covers. They had Superman. The death of Superman was in a pure black bag.
Mm-hmm.
I understand marketing was to get our money, and like a true sucker, I knowingly took it.
Yeah, we all did.
You know, and I liked it. I liked the covers and the holograph to it. See, a part of me wondered if like Gamera had metallic sheen or holographic things, would it have sold a little bit more because it was shiny, right? We're all attracted to shiny things.
Yeah, maybe, but then again, you're taking a super niche at that time. Gamera, by today's standards, is still very niche.
Yes.
But you're taking like the niches of the niche.
Yes.
I mean, you go any lower and you get like, Gilala as like a 5-issue miniseries. But still, to this day, it's like I still look at these things. I'm like, I can't believe they produced this.
Yeah.
And then, around the same time, Trendmasters got on it like, hey, we got our Godzilla line selling like hotcakes. Let's start doing Gamera. And unfortunately, like, that whole company came crashing down, like, around that point, too. Well, no, actually, no. I take that back 2 years later after TriStar unleashed their mess and left poor Trendmasters, holding the debt in their hand of all that mess. But they, that gap, like, and Trendmasters made really cool-looking Gamera figures. You just couldn't find them. Like, even today, they're still like it's like, you see one in public, you're like, oh my god, I found a unicorn. But there was nothing to push it. The movies were in Japan, and they weren't coming out here. I don't think ADV. I think it took ADV like another 2001 or 2002 before they all finally got like a mainstream release. I mean, you could even buy that tape when it came out. It was a rental copy. It cost like $90 for anybody to buy.
Yeah. And for those who like want the comics, are afraid of eBay prices or yelling out my eyes, I believe the box set by Arrow has
the whole thing.
It has the whole thing.
Including Matt Frank's
Frank's.
And a little thing that I found out like last week. If you look, I believe it's in like issue 3 in the letter section. A very young, very spry Matt Frank as Matthew Frank wrote into the comic book. There, he's in the letter section.
Yes,
Yeah.
there's also a letter section, if you reread it, a 22-year-old gentleman whose first name I think was actually Chris. He wrote something like, I don't really know a lot of kaiju friends, so if you would like to write to me letters so I can meet new friends pre-internet, please, this is my address, because they printed out your address. Like, I know that dude doesn't live there anymore, but a part of me realized this now and was like, I want to write to this guy, see what's happening,
Are
see
you
if we
still
can
alive?
find.
What's going on?
I know, it's like I'm so sorry, this pre-internet time where you didn't like he was trying to make friends, and I thought that was nice that they printed his letter. But a part of me was like, oh, right to that man.
I just see Jessica like reading this last night, going making notes, and then just like, oh, just one single tear just rolling down.
Just like, no,
It's like
I want friends
poor
too.
man. It's like, I'll just come and give you a hug. That's all. Just
I
feel
know.
loved.
Yes, and
So-
thank you for everybody that was like tuning in this whole time.
Yes, thank you guys. I know we're the last ones. Thank you, and I want to thank Kyle, if you're still out there, man. Thank you for inviting us onto this whole thing. This whole weekend has been
I am still out here, you
absolutely
guys.
phenomenal. You pulled a freaking miracle.
Well, you know, miracles, those are religious things, and I'm not really religious, so I just belong to the Church of Godzilla. That's me cracking a beer, because you guys
Yeah.
are the last
Yes.
panel.
And he
Thank
did
you,
so
man.
much work. And I apologize, my face is getting darker and darker, and I just never got up to turn on these lights. I was tanning as I was in this panel, but
Nice. Well, I hope you guys had a really good time presenting the Dark Horse
Yes.
retrospective.
We
For
did.
Gamera.
Did you have a nice time with our incessant rambling?
Yeah, absolutely. I always have a nice time with your incessant ramblings, you guys.
That's our MO.
I'm going through all the amazing comments. Thank you, everybody, for commenting.
I keep catching things. I'm like, someone just said, "Hell yeah, Ben Riley." I'm like, yes, he knows.
Yes, Xavier Ray. He's actually been to our panel at San
has
Diego
he?
Comic Con. Yeah, he's been to our panel.
That's supposed to be next week too. Oh,
Yes.
a lot of
Yes.
things. But again, shout out to Kyle, man. You like this is, I mean, this is parting the seas right here. You. I can't believe you put this all together.
Well, you know, I had a lot of help. And I'm just going to, you know, since you guys are here on screen with me, I hope you guys don't mind if I use you as my crutch,
problem.
so I'm not literally the only thing on screen talking to the camera
ahead,
right
man.
now.
This is your show.
But so I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who helped make this happen. I know that I did a lot of planning and I did a lot of work behind it, but really I could not have done this alone. I'm not going to go through and name everybody, because if I do that, I'm going to forget people. So
Yep.
you all know who you are. But one of the things that really made this entire experience worthwhile was the ability to just say, you know what? I know somebody that does that, and reach out and say, hey, dude, would you be interested in doing that? And because everybody has been stuck at home or not being able to go out, and everybody everywhere is sick of not being able to congregate, I think this just sort of like culminated into such an amazing event, because it's not just the stuff that I did, it's the stuff that everybody out there coming in to watch these things. I have been more than pleased with all the responses. Just about everybody has been a gem in the comments and watching live, and like really even on social media. I did look, Chris. I did see the thread you were talking about, and I must say you are correct. My hat, it doesn't fit as well as it did earlier today. But honestly, this whole thing has been worth it to me, to see that sort of outpouring of support from the fans and from people who love giant monster movies. There are so many more people out there than just one convention, and I'm glad so many people got to experience it.
If I may if I might paraphrase one real quick, because
Okay.
it really does sum up this whole experience this weekend. I forgot the gentleman's name, but he said, look, I've never gone to G-Fest. I've always wanted to go, and I've always heard such great things. This has been, I get it now. I get why everyone loves, because this is the camaraderie everybody loves about this whole thing.
Yeah,
And that sums it up best. That right there is this whole weekend.
Super
Yes.
cool. It's
So
super
hats off
good.
to you, sir.
Hi, Robert Vergara.
Hats
And
off to you guys too.
yes, yes. And Kyle, before I forget, Chris has
Yes.
been really great on keeping up our social media. Could you tell us where our social media is before we forget?
Could I
We
tell
are
you?
on Facebook. Chris, we are on
Oh,
Facebook.
I'm sorry.
I
No,
thought
it's
you were
okay.
asking
Yeah,
me
yeah.
to tell you
No,
guys. where
Kyle,
your social
no,
media
no,
is.
no.
It's around
Yes.
here somewhere.
That was my way of apologizing to you,
Yes.
Kyle, for interrupting.
For interrupting you. Yes, shameless plugging right now. We are on Stitcher, iTunes, and Spotify now under the Kaiju Kingdom podcast. If you don't use any of those, you can directly download us from panzercrush.com. And we are also, if you want to talk to us, we are on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Our Twitter handle is just the Kaiju Kingdom. Facebook and Instagram are the Kaiju Kingdom podcast as well. Find us on there. If you want to have any questions, anything at all, or even want to say hi, just hit us up there. We're always on.
Yes, thank you, Alex and Megan and Robert, for saying hi and tuning in. I'm just reading last minute. So.
I'm scrolling through some of those comments myself.
Oh, thank God, Kyle.
Thank
a
you
lot,
guys.
A lot of people love
obviously
you.
Seemed like they had a really good time this weekend. Thank you all for tuning in. Hey, I even see Gretchen in there. Yeah, honestly, this whole thing it's been a blast, and I like doing work to make cool stuff. So let's keep making cool stuff, right?
Yes.
All right, I don't really have anything else to say. This has been an amazing experience. I hope we don't have to do it again next year. But if we do have to do it again next year, I'll have a lot more time to plan.
Well, if anything, sir, this at least opens the door to broadcast from G-Fest now. I think that this would be an ability for a lot of panels to be able to share out there with a lot of people who couldn't make it to that show. Well, I think this adds a new wrinkle.
So there's a wrinkle in your wrinkle though.
Okay.
And I don't know about the new hotel. Maybe the new hotel has a way better setup.
Yeah.
But even just the ability to broadcast from any panel room or any convention room is usually dependent on there being good internet connection.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, as much as I would love for that to be the case, it really depends on the venue and depends on not just the venue, but the actual convention and how much they're willing to put into the tech angle of things, And luckily, I think I said this during the opening ceremonies, I'm just really good at making things look pretty tight for very little money. So, yeah, thumbs up. By the way, all of the panels were being streamed through all except for the Kaiju Live one, which was on their own channel. All of them are using StreamYard, which is a service that Collect All Monsters has paid for, essentially, which is why I've been able to use it. It gives us all the cool, fancy graphics.
I love it.
And it has been a power horse. I was really afraid that I was going to be working this thing to the bone by doing panel after panel after panel, which is essentially live stream video over and over and over again. But the whole tech aspect of things worked super well. I was really happy. And yeah, this is if this has to be the wave of the future, I'm happy to be one of those people to ride that first wave, man.
Yeah. I mean, you've inspired me to up our game too. Like I'm getting into this. So
cool, man.
You're what's the terms, like rising seas raise all ships? Like,
yeah, I love that term. I really love that term. A friend of mine in town, way back in the day, we used to talk about this group called the Portland Geek Council, and he's the one who introduced me to that phrase, "A rising tide lifts all boats." And so the idea was to feed the community, feed the geek community. And here, just that's like a local thing here in Portland, like have all the geeky businesses, have all the geeky people reach out to each other and lift it all up. And I was like, wow, what an inspirational way to look at a community. And I think I tried to adopt that throughout the rest of the Kaiju cast. And I mean, I think it worked because obviously we wouldn't have had such a community outpouring over this weekend. And it's really been great. I mean, and I don't really need to say too much more, right?
No, that's it. I think that's the perfect way to end it. So,
all right, everybody watching live, you guys rule. everybody who came this weekend. You guys rule. I'm gonna finish my beer and I'm gonna go hang out with my wife and my puppy and watch something probably not kaiju related for the night. But you guys, we'll see you around. Don't forget to check out all this cool stuff. Bookmark things. Kaiju Con-Line website will stay up. I'm not going to take it down. There's no reason to take it down. Somebody asked in the chat if the virtual dealer's room is going to stay open. And I guess the deal is I'll have to talk with the people who are vendors in that room and see how they feel about it, because I don't want to just cancel their items. That seems weird, even though it seems more like a real world kind of thing to do. But as far as I'm concerned, we're going to keep all the information up, keep all the links up. So if you saw somebody that you liked over the weekend who was doing a live stream, please make sure to follow them. Please make sure to continue reaching out and grow that community.
Yes.
Okay. That being said,
thank you.
You guys have been awesome. Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Kaiju Con-Line.
Thank you.
Jamata.